everyone, and welcome to the unfamiliar shift of localization. I'm Ariela Kiradjian, partner and CEO, COO of the Boutique Lifestyle Leaders Association and co-founder of StayBoutique. Today, I'm so excited to be back with Amy, and we have David this week as our special guest star. We're going to talk all things localization, which has been such a hot topic in hospitality these past few years. I'm interested to see how it's going to shift. This is, of course, a BLLA and StayBoutique production. So I know we have a lot of people who have been with us these last few weeks, and you're here every Friday, and I appreciate that. So just so it's ingrained in your brain, and for those who haven't joined us before, let's get into what's the definition of boutique. Here it is. It's a business that offers a curated service, product, or experience that is one of a kind. Typically, it has a defined and differentiating point of view and provides a memorable impression due to its distinct approach. So if you're a hotel, you do this, but with overnight experiences. So let's get into the word lifestyle. What does lifestyle mean? It's the distinguishing way one lives, including the style, attitudes, and possessions of an individual, group, or culture. Now let's put the two together. What is the boutique lifestyle? So someone who enjoys a boutique lifestyle wants a specialized, curated service, product, or experience that reflects their modern values and helps support their lifestyle ideals. This can be a business with cultural impact or category innovation, providing a unique sensorial experience or something that simply makes people's lives better. From environments to new-to-world products and services, the only bounds boutique knows are those of the imagination. And just so you know, these are official BLLA definitions. We're so excited to come out with these. We're going to do some fun things with these definitions. We also have the official 14 categories of boutique hotels. Yes, that is how big the sector has become, that boutique is no longer a category in hospitality. It's its own entity, and it has 14 categories. So a little bit about who we are. I know a lot of you already know about BLLA. We're the official association for the world's boutique lifestyle leaders. We're the original hub supporting boutique and independent hotels since 2009, and we value leadership, advocacy, and education. StayBoutique is our new baby, and that's where you see the cherry come into play. So at StayBoutique, we're content curators. We live the best in boutique with our guides, trends, and happenings. We're collaboration connectors. We're providing the community opportunities to be discovered. And hey, we're connoisseurs of cool. We're a hub for the daring pioneers and businesses in the boutique community. Also, the cherry that you see on this screen, it's really important because this is the emblem that is the boutique community. It shows how daring the boutique hotels and businesses are, how daring everyone involved with the boutique or business is, and the traveler. They want to go down a unique path. And so we were thinking of how do we showcase boutique? You could say 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars. And I said, I don't care about the stars, okay? I care about, are you authentic? What experiences do you provide? And that's where the cherry comes in. So with that, a few reminders, please subscribe and follow us on BLLA and StayBoutique. We'd love to continue engaging with you. Please put our emails in your primary inbox so we don't go to spam. info@blla.org and news@boutiqueweekly.com. We're all about making sure that our global industry is up to date about relevant news. And also hashtag Boutique Strong is the one for the industry, and hashtag Save Boutique Hotels for the travelers who want to see their boutique hotels reopen. And also, this is how you show you stand with boutique. And lastly, guys, you know, we're a community. We're a family. The boutique sector is, has, and always will be a family. Together, as a community, we reinvented what a hotel was. And even through a crisis, we're going to continue innovating. Our community is not going anywhere. And that is why we started this series called The Unfamiliar Shift. It is to showcase great examples of adaptation to what we call the new paradigm in the boutique community. And with that, I want to introduce you to our guest star, David Rochefort, the president of Graduate Hotels, and of course, my amazing co-host, Amy Jakubowski, the founder of AEJ Collective. Also, everyone, I want to let you know, if you have a question, like an actual question that you want to ask David, please use the Q&A box at the bottom. If you want to leave a comment, please use the chat feature. I'm saying this because we don't get a transcript of the chats. we get a transcript of the Q&A. So in case we missed one, at least we can keep record of that. So with that, I'll hand it off to Amy.
Thank you. Thank you. David, we are so excited to have you here this week. And I'm already seeing chats that the audience is looking forward to hearing from you as well. I think a lot of people know you. You've been an integral part of the launch and growth of the Graduate brand since its inception in 2014. But to get the conversation started, we'd like to hear a little bit about a bit of your history and a bit of the brand and where we're at today. A little bit of background. So if you could start us off, that would be great.
Absolutely. So, first of all, obviously just truly humbled and so excited to be here. And I think everything that BLLA is doing for our industry, especially in times like this, is so important. So it's just really an honor to be on and be talking about all that we're doing at Graduate and right now. And,
thank you, David.
So it's a big question. So please interrupt me and stop me from going on and rambling too much. But AJ Capital, we are a fully integrated developer, owner, operator, designer of boutique hotels and lifestyle real estate. We were founded by Ben Weprin in Q4 of 2008. So the depth of the prior downturn and the entrepreneurism, the grit that it took for Ben to launch our company in a time like that is really the backbone of the company. And, I kind of put AJ into 4 phases or 3 phases of the company, eventually ending on Graduate. The first phase of when Ben started by himself was really identifying and acquiring iconic lifestyle real estate. And what I mean by that are hotels like the Raleigh or the Ile-de-France and St. Bart's. His theory being that those lifestyle luxury hotels had been hit the hardest through the prior crisis and therefore would come back the most, but also that brands that are built on storytelling and history and heritage ultimately are those that will survive, any sort of a downturn, any sort of a trough. Phase 2, as I like to think of it, is where we started to really become developers, again, of these independent and boutique hotels, and really started in our backyard of Chicago with the Hotel Lincoln, which I'll spend a little bit of time on, was really the growth story for Graduate. The Thompson Chicago, the Soho House in the West Loop of Chicago, and the Chicago Athletic Association, which for anybody that doesn't know that project, unbelievable revitalization of a 100-plus-year-old building on Michigan Avenue. It really was an architectural project more than a renovation or a repositioning project. And then we also did our first ground up project was the Thompson in Nashville, and then the Pontchartrain in New Orleans. So you can certainly see a through line in terms of the types of projects that AJ Capital took on. I mentioned the Hotel Lincoln. For anybody that doesn't know Lincoln Park in Chicago, it's a beautiful neighborhood, slightly outside the loop of where most of the business in Chicago occurs. We had acquired that hotel. It was a former Days Inn. It was actually in receivership. They had started to renovate it. It had fallen into receivership, was half completed. Ben walked by it every day for 9 months, and he'll tell the story. He called the bank on his walk every week. And eventually the bank relented and gave an opportunity, and we acquired it. And from a repositioning and design perspective, what we did was we created a hotel that was really built for the neighborhood, not necessarily even the city of Chicago. It was built for the neighborhood of Lincoln Park. The thoughtful design kind of went from the moment you stepped foot through the hotel, the stories that we told of Lincoln Park and the neighborhood, really dynamic food and beverage from your classic neighborhood corner coffee shop in Elaine's to a rooftop in J. Parker. And so it was just a very thoughtful renovation. People thought we were nuts. People said, no one in Chicago is going to stay in Lincoln Park when their business is downtown.
Those are the best, though.
And exactly, and that's what we found. People, we hit this, and this was 2011, 2012, and really hit the initial curve of the boutique kind of movement here. And people were really drawn to that type of product that was inspirational and aspirational and just gave them a different flavor for a city. It really gave you an experience for the city itself. And so Graduate honestly was, drawn from this idea of how do we take a neighborhood hotel on the road? How do we take this elsewhere? And we had two opportunities just happened to fall in our laps, one in Oxford, Mississippi, and another in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Both university towns, both unbelievably dynamic, unbelievable histories and stories, both growing at unbelievable paces. And so that was kind of the light bulb that went off. And we said, well, maybe there's this opportunity that we can create a platform around this idea. Let's go take independent boutique lifestyle hotels and go do them in college towns. And at the time that we launched, there were great mom and pop hotels in a lot of these towns, but there was no one that ever did it on scale. And truthfully, the vast majority of our competition has been the predominantly branded limited service product. And a lot of that is often positioned on highways, in and out of town. You know, we've been relentless in terms of our real estate, kind of A+ locations in each of our markets. And that's how we launched. You know, today we've got 22 graduates. We were set to be opening 4 more as we speak, which will obviously come at the end of summer now. So we're on our pace to have about 35 graduates by the end of next year with our development pipeline. So obviously it's been a concept that's really resonated and taken off. In terms of me, thank you. And I will tell you, when I joined, although everyone on this call was like, this was a total no-brainer. This is what everyone's always said. When I joined in 2014 at the start of this, even before we launched, I had a lot of people saying, you're nuts. Like, you're going to go and, you know, do hotels in college towns? You're crazy.
I get that a lot too, you're nuts. So I feel you.
So,
I'll relate to that, yeah.
My kind of history of landing here, and I think falling in love with boutique hotels and being drawn to this, it's been a little bit of the untraditional route. And I'm sure there's some people that know my background and say he went to Cornell. Like, what do you mean the untraditional route? He's followed the same exact path as like 90% of our industry. But, you know, it was really shaped by 2 summers when I was in school. One of which was when my peers were going to go work for the Hiltons and the Marriotts and, you know, great opportunities. My first internship was actually with the Ronald McDonald House Charities of Southern California. And through that role, which anybody that doesn't know what the Ronald McDonald House Charities do, it's, you know, no cost, low cost housing for families whose children are often getting, you know, extreme treatments at hospitals. And through that experience, it was unbelievably high touch hospitality. You had these families that were staying with you. And I had an executive director tell me that, you know, her theory on hospitality was you always expect the greatest hospitality in the best moments of your life, your honeymoon, your kind of celebrations. And our goal was to give the greatest hospitality in the worst moments of people's lives and kind of become that backdrop to what we do. So I always say, like, I literally started in the industry cleaning toilets in the Ronald McDonald House Charities in Pasadena, California. The following summer, I went totally the other direction. And I worked an amazing 2 jobs in the summer, but I partnered up with a former Cornell grad who spent 15 years at Four Seasons, and he had essentially started a business of managing some of the biggest houses in Los Angeles, and he managed them like a Four Seasons. When you talk about the, you know, highest touch, the most discerning clients and customers, that's who we were dealing with. And so it was an unbelievable education in terms of almost what I call like an innkeeper mentality. I mean, we were on our toes at every moment in what we did. And I actually had a second job that summer, which for any student that's watching, I think is like the greatest job in a hotel. It's affectionately called a lobby lizard. But I was a lobby lizard at the London in West Hollywood right after they had opened and repositioned. And, you know, with a lobby lizard, and by the way, I was like full method actor. They put me in a 3-piece suit. I had a top hat.
Oh my gosh.
I was supposed to be the English.
You match the elevator graphics there.
Exactly. I'm supposed to be the English gentleman. I'm supposed to be the English gentleman that like met you at the door and like welcomed you. And then I did it, of course, in my like, you know, 19-year-old Southern California accent, which sounds nothing like England. And then the best part of that job was on Fridays. I was in charge of the house dog, which his name was Garbanzo, and he was a British bulldog. And he would only respond to treats. So sometimes if anyone knows the London West Hollywood, beautiful marble entrance, I would kind of drag him around on his stomach is the only way I would get him to move. And he also would crawl up my leg to rip treats out of my pocket. So, but, you know, what that job and what that role did is I just really, truly, you know, that was that hotel had just opened, the types of clientele that were coming in. When you're a lobby lizard, as I like to call it. I mean, I truly understood how to like grease the wheels of that hotel and how to get things done. And it was, you know, it was really just hospitality 101 and finding ways to make people happy no matter, you know, some of these people could not be made happy, by the way. That's part of hospitality. So that was kind of my history on that side. And I think, you know, I was drawn to these differentiated experiences from day one. But I was also drawn to the real estate side of our business. And for me, what I think is so interesting in hospitality real estate is it truly does reward those that are the most creative. It truly does reward those that are willing to outwork. I was never the smartest in any room. I'm sure some of my classmates were on and they would be the first to raise their hands and say he definitely was not the smartest in any of the classes. But it just is a fascinating, it's an extremely niche part of the real estate industry. And I was lucky enough to come out of school and land as the first analyst hired at Pebblebrook Hotel Trust post IPO. So $450 million IPO. Wow. I was employee 11. I did a lot of what analysts do, which is a little bit of everything. The first Christmas gift I received was a sleeping bag because I was told to be expecting to sleep under my desk a lot, and that was just the mentality that they had. But you know, over the course of my 3.5 years, over the course of my 3 years, you know, we acquired 30 hotels, a lot predominantly independent and boutiques. You know, a lot of Kimptons, Viceroys. We were the first first third-party owners of both the Morgan's Hotel, the Mondrian in West Hollywood, the Redberry with SBE, and so. Little did I know at the time, what I was getting was this education was kind of the best of the best boutique operators, but also doing it through this lens of what I would argue is probably the best in class institutional owner of independent hotels, which is Pebblebrook. And, you know, now post LaSalle merger, they've got 34. I think they may be the largest owner of independent boutique hotels.
Yeah, John Bortz, he spoke a few weeks ago about our crisis guide. He's awesome.
John is fantastic.
Yep.
John's fantastic.
Amazing.
So 2014 rolled around. I can bring back a little John story. 2014 rolled around and I was ready for my next step and looking at any of like, you know, the blue chip firms and things like that. And this opportunity to join this 35-year-old entrepreneur in Chicago, Ben Wepperin, kind of came up. And be a part of this, launching this brand and platform. And again, no joke. People were saying you're leaving San Francisco and LA boutique hotels to go do Oxford, Mississippi and Ann Arbor. And they thought I was nuts. But I remember talking to John about the opportunity and John had met Ben once or twice and kind of knew his reputation in the industry. And you know, and so the biggest compliment John could ever give anybody is scrappy, which probably is like the greatest definition of the boutique hotel community. And he was like, when he was trying to lead me to my next thing, he said, you know, you will learn to be scrappy by going to AJ Capital and do this, which is like the biggest compliment he could have given for any of the opportunities. And so I joined in 2014. I was 27. I actually joined in acquisitions and asset management. The brand had not launched yet. We had 2 hotels at the time. And really over the course of the last 6 years have kind of worked in every little role, from the development side to obviously the acquisitions and asset management side. We've raised some significant money over the last several years around the concept. It really has resonated. I've been a part of those fundraisers. And then eventually stepped in to the president role about 9 months ago.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Thank you. And
great timing.
And it is perfect timing. It couldn't have written it any better.
Yeah.
Well, you started in a downturn, so it's perfect timing.
Yeah.
Only one way to go is up.
Got it.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. It's been so humbling but exciting to be a part of this. And you know, I truly do believe, you know, I mentioned the phases of graduate. You know, I mean, we're incubating, or of AJ, we're incubating, you know, phases 4 through 10 now. And you know, AJ Capital, I believe, you know, if you look at my background, what I like to think is, you know, this balance of kind of the left and the right side of the brain, the institutional and the creative side. And I truly believe that Ben and AJ Capital, what we've developed is truly, you know, the greatest platform and company that does both the creative as well as the institutional side of our business. And that's how we've kind of developed our positioning. And I'd argue it's, there's a handful in the same league as us, and, I think we're pretty excited about where we're going from here.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many questions I have, but I know we have, I wanted to.
I told you I would ramble. You guys.
Well, I know, yeah, but you know what? I wanted to, if I can, I know Ariela wants to pick your brain about some local stuff, and you guys really found a market. But what I wanted to do, while we're still early in the in our hour, is you have this slogan campaign, and it ties back to a bit of the genesis of your brand. We are students. And recently you have all these slogans up. And of course, doing a little bit of research and background before this interview, I laughed out loud. We are Thornton Mellon. I just dated myself. I get it. We are toga parties. We are chipping in for gas. I love the concept behind that. I would love for you to give us just a touch on that. But in the meantime, I'd love for our audience in the chat box or tell us what you are. What were you in your college days? What does that draw? I mean, I'm still laughing at We Are Thornton Mellon.
So we are all students has been really our motto or slogan since day one. It speaks to, the thirst for knowledge and youthful optimism that really occurs in your college days. And it's what we kind of try to draw on as a brand, is that nostalgia for all those days that put all of kind of today aside and really kind of emotionally connects, and whether you went to the school or not, you're going to find that connection through our hotels. And so, that campaign really started out of just conversations. As you can imagine, we're all on our Zooms and we're on our Zoom happy hours and we're doing our things. And it was, several weeks ago that we were sitting there and just saying, gosh, how much do we miss like the little things of college, and how much do we miss football games, and how much do we miss all of that? And so it really just started organically about, thinking about better times and where we're going to be when we come out of this, and, getting back to the towns and the markets and the cities that we're in. And there's the back and forth on those, as you can imagine, was great. I mean, we probably have enough for several other videos if we really wanted to do multiple campaigns. Right. But the We Are Toga Party is my favorite. And I will share, we have thrown a toga party at graduate hotels. We did it at the opening of our hotel in Eugene, Oregon. For anybody that is a big movie buff, Eugene or the University of Oregon was the where they filmed Animal House. And so that was the basis for it. We actually have a piece of art, which is a toga in the room. And so as part of our opening party, we actually invited Otis Day, who sings Shout in the movie. He came to our opening as a total surprise, and we paid some certainly 21 and over frat boys to dress up in togas and crash the opening party, and we threw a toga party. So We Are Toga Party certainly really resonates with our brand, and I think it's just the fun that we try to have and the playfulness of who we are.
Love it. That really speaks to local. And I know, Ariela, you want to dive into a few questions.
Yeah. And then also, Dan, I saw your question come in about, we have some travel advisors on this webinar, and they're saying, is graduate like JDB? And I want to just start out by saying maybe pre-acquisition, because you still have your, you guys are still independent, but what's your take on that? Would you compare graduate to JDB?
Yeah, I think we get all those comparisons. We get the Kimpton, early day Kimptons. We get the JDB, which by the way, the Hotel Lincoln was actually a JDB before the acquisitions. Thompson, pre all the stuff. So, I think I totally understand it. I think, we pull from some of them. There's being fully integrated owner, operator, and brand is really hard to find. So JDB was not owner. They were still partnering with other owners. I know in the early days they did have several and they would take different positions, but the fact that we have every piece. We also do the development and the design piece, which we'll get into localization, how key it is to control everything that we do. I think is the biggest differentiator, and truthfully, the biggest differentiator for our brand as we continue to grow.
Yep, that's a good answer. So pre-acquisition, yes, I love that you still have your independent identity. Makes me very happy. So let's get into localization, the theme of today's episode. So first up, how do you define localization? What does that mean to you?
We have a great saying. My dad was an attorney, and he traveled 250 days a year. And, you know, to him, a hotel is a hotel, right? I mean, I've heard this from so many different people, and he says, if there's a bed and a shower, it's totally fine. And then, you know, as he got to the end of his career and I started here, I would ask the question, like, do you ever have that kind of thing, Dad, where you wake up and you don't know what city you're in? And he would say, all the time.
Oh my God.
And so our goal is literally, if you were to open your eyes and you were to look around the room, you know exactly where you are. So like if you are in Charlottesville, Virginia, you'll look at a piece of art on the wall, you'll look at everything, and you'll know exactly, like, I am in Charlottesville, Virginia, and this hotel, this product is so thoughtfully designed. The program is so thoughtfully done. Like, I know exactly where I am in the world, and it could never be replicated anywhere else. And to me, that's true localization. And, you know, it's a commitment that is, you know, at the core of everything that we do to ensure that you have that reaction from guests.
Yeah, agreed. And so, you know, gathering locals, integrating local culture, it's been a big trend in hospitality, you know, for a few years now. But how do you see this shifting in the next, let's say, 18 to 24 months? We don't want to talk about, you know, that new paradigm, but how do you see the future in like a year and a half, 2 years for localization?
Yeah, I think it is imperative for hotels to continue to survive. And I know that might be a little too far out there. You know, the brands will always have a place, but I think what smaller brands like us, or smaller collections, hotels like us, in terms of our commitment to design, the Airbnbs and the home sharing parts of the world that people have really opened up. I think to compete, you have to have some element of that. I just don't think the commodity hotel product is going to continue to have a place in the market.
Yeah.
I think, you know, to me, I've always said, people have compared us a lot to Airbnb. Then we said, you know, we're the anti-Airbnb, or we're also the Airbnb of hotel. I don't know what we are. Either we are or we're not. We're both in some ways. But, you know, we really have never worried about Airbnb, because I actually see them as less of a competitor and more of like a peer in how we approach hospitality. But if I was the Courtyard and the Residence Inn and you know, some of these other just branded hotels that you know, work a little bit more as a commodity in many of these markets, like, that's where, you know, a lot of these other niches and other home sharing and everything else has really started to pick off a lot of business. And, you know, I think it's just going to get even tougher to compete. So I think, you know, as we just look forward, it's going to be even more important. Now, you know, I would say, as someone that's living it every day and has seen it over the last 5 years, doing it right and doing it well is very difficult. As I've said, I've mentioned, you know, we start every hotel from scratch. We start every story from scratch. We're crazy about finding those truly local stories. And, you know, the easiest way to think of this is any hotel in one of these university towns can just slap the school colors on the wall, right?
Yeah.
And call themselves local. Like, that's not being local. That's actually like a very lazy way out. You know, for us, it's, you know, in Charlottesville, Virginia, I've used a few times, but you actually wake up and you look over your head and there's this a fish over your head. It's a wahoo. And everyone's like, why am I sleeping underneath this wahoo fish? But anyone that knows that story knows that, you know, the wahoo is a nickname for the students at UVA because the wahoo fish drinks 4 times its weight in water, and the students at UVA drink 4 times their weight in beer. That was where the story came from. So,
I love that.
you know, it's about finding those like truly, truly unique stories to connect with. You know, it's not just doing the obvious, right? I think we'll see a lot more of the obvious, and those that can truly find ways to emotionally connect will be the winners.
Yeah, it's like you're kind of saying, where it's like not forced, but it's a part of the identity of the hotel and the way that it was built. Because I'm saying that, I'm not going to call anyone out on here, but I've seen a lot of brands do that, where they kind of force the localization, be like, oh, look, I'm local, let me check off a box. And that's not authentic at all. I want to get into, because I know people are going to have a lot of questions about this, going on from that. Talk to us about your process for sourcing local vendors and how you can make using local versus, you know, those made in China or whatever it is, work with your bottom line.
Yeah. So we're unbelievably unique that we essentially have a design studio in-house. And it was a commitment we made from day one to build that, because we are so crazy about literally ensuring that every single fabric, finish, FF&E piece, everything that goes into our hotels is going through our process and the lens of our brand. And so, we have this really unique ability to sit there and decide, I'd say it's really three different things in our world. It's, do we utilize the best in class vendors that we have to design something often custom, scaled through, all of our channels from a design perspective? Do you go locally, or do you even go vintage? And we do a lot of found pieces in a lot of our hotels. And, we try to do, all of our hotels get finished with kind of found pieces. And I like to think, what we do is we kind of draw a radius around the hotel, and you're trying to find it within that radius, because, whatever's found will really be truly local. You can go to, some of these antique dealers in different parts of the country, and you can't find two of the same things. I mean, they truly will speak to where they are. And then, one of our favorite things is we'll have a trinket or a piece of, a piece of art on the wall, and someone will come in and be like, my grandmother had that on her wall. Like, that is one of the greatest reactions that we can have. So, so those are kind of the three things. So we do quite a bit of local, comes a lot on the art side and working with artisans, from a local perspective, a lot of woodworkers. We actually, in Fayetteville, Arkansas, we have several hogs heads made out of wood from the saws that people, like, literally, woodworkers created these hog heads for our bar, which is one of the greatest examples. And so it's always just, in terms of the bottom line, I think, the way we build our budgets, our development budgets, always takes into account a certain component of that kind of found or local product. And it really does have a huge difference. A lot of what we'll do local will be in our public spaces. That's where locals will interact with our hotel. It's the first impression for our guests. So, in Nashville, which we had opened in January, the first thing you see is a huge gallery wall of botanical prints that are all local to the state of Tennessee, that was done by a local artist in Nashville. It's kind of that first moment you have, that story resonates, people will take that with them immediately. And so that's kind of, you just have to be committed to it. You have to do it in the right way, again, thoughtful way. You can't just throw it down guests' throats. I think they're very, I think our guests at this point are unbelievably discerning, and they know when you're faking it. And so, it's a commitment on every project, I think, at the end of the day. And, do we spend a little bit more? Maybe, but I think the return is there pretty quickly. And we also, by having the benefit of that in-house team, we find savings elsewhere through a project budget that, will offset some of these real, truly memorable moments that speak locally.
I love it. Amy, before we get to the next question, Tim, I see you in the Q&A, Tim Franz, and he says, who does David care?
Thank you, Tim.
Well, David, you did post on social media, David, the commentary on what we thought of the beard. And
my quarantine beard. So Tim will appreciate this. So Tim, Julie had suggested that we all play a drinking game that every time I touch my hair, any of the graduate employees have to take a shot. So, but she said that no one would be able to make it through the first 15 minutes of the commentary. So
they're all drunk. They're on the floor.
Let's go play it right now. I'll go get my tequila downstairs. I love it.
It's so funny. It what you've been talking about, what we brought up with localization, kind of bridges into one of the things that I had read about and seen, and you boasted as well, is like, you guys really are kind of the counterculture investors. And I love this quote: our passion to inspire is matched only by our relentless grit and obsessive determination to execute spaces where others cannot. And you are obviously doing things. You noted that you might be spending more money in this. You're really focused on certain things that people talk about but don't necessarily execute. When you act as a renegade and you go out and do something new that somebody hasn't done, or you spend money the way people haven't done it, there's lessons to be learned. So what would you highlight as some of your greatest success and your missteps?
Yeah, I think
one, if you don't want to share all of them.
We've never made not a single misstep in
right, ever.
I think the counterculture, I think counter-cyclical, I think that nature has always been even when Graduate launched, it was about kind of staying a step ahead of the industry. It was about getting into secondary, tertiary markets before everybody else. It was about really finding a niche in the industry, creating a platform. The platform happened to become a very strong brand as we built it. And so I think it's you have to have, when you make a decision, I think you have to have real commitment to the decision. I think you need to make sure you see it through. I think, so much of it is probably a gut instinct of when to pivot and when to press forward. I probably can't give real advice on how to interpret that. You have to kind of read the tea leaves of each individual reaction or experience. And so, through kind of the last 6 years, I think, we've been unbelievably committed. I think Ben in particular has always seen what Graduate could and would be. And what I mean by that is, I always joke, when I joined, I thought the portfolio would be a cute 8 to 10 hotel portfolio, and maybe we'd sell it off and do something like that. But when you ask him, he's like, "Oh, I knew from day one it'd be 100 hotels," which I still don't believe. But like he believes in the long-term vision, and that's what pushes us and drives us forward. So you just have to kind of understand, especially when you're taking risks, that the rewards are big, and you have to understand when to pivot out, but ultimately when you need to push forward and know that you've got real belief in the concept and real belief in the people behind it, and just kind of push through any short-term trials that come up.
I see. Amy, I wanted to ask David one quick thing. You were talking about getting into the secondary markets before anyone else did, which you did. One thing we've been hearing though is that in terms of development 2021 and beyond, do you see a lot of these developers and owners who were focused on urban markets maybe shifting to the secondary, tertiary markets?
Possibly. I think what's fascinating about the markets that we're in, the secondary and tertiary markets, is they really reward true due diligence.
Yeah.
I think when we launched the brand and the platform, we had boots on the ground in probably 70 different markets, and we had the pin on the map of exactly the location that we wanted. By the way, we haven't even acquired in all those markets yet, but we still know the pin or the exact location that a Graduate will go in several future markets. And they really just reward that true due diligence. I think it's hard for someone that's developed in New York City for years and years to then say, I'm going to go start investing in, Mississippi without any expertise and kind of real knowledge of how the markets work and how the local economy really works. And, I think it was just through a lot of really hard work in the early days to identify sites and opportunities, a lot of hand-to-hands with families in these markets as well. This is not institutional owners. You don't just call up the broker and say, I'm really interested in this address. Can you get me on the phone? I mean, it's in several of these hotels, I think Ann Arbor, I mentioned, although that was an early target and very much a part of our history of Graduate coming to fruition, it took us 3 years to acquire that hotel. It was family owned and operated, and it was just, weekly, monthly phone calls, working with that family, making them comfortable that we're going to uphold the history of that hotel, and not just uphold it, but actually enhance it through our brand and our visions. The number of sites, we've got the Hotel Durant in Berkeley, California is 100+ years old. In New Haven, what was formerly the Hotel Duncan was essentially an SRO, but had a tremendous history locally, was still family owned at the time, and took a lot of effort to convince them that we were the right next step. So there's just, it's not as easy as investing in the big markets. There's not nearly as much transparency in the marketplace itself. And so it takes a lot of time and effort and energy. And, truthfully, we're probably, our acquisitions team is, I consider, one of the best in the business. And there's also a lot of them because it takes a lot of extra time. So there's been a real investment and commitment to finding and sourcing those unique deals.
Good. Very informative.
Very informative. And I think that kind of, there's a ton of questions coming in for you, but I think they overlap with some of them. You talk about how you've done that, this team of investors. And of course, everybody's sort of curious too, about your pipeline, about your today's pipeline. Like you've just recently opened one in January. I believe you had a few slated to open this year. What does that look like? What was the goal? Are you impacted? Not to dive into the negative aspect, And also tell us about your venture, because I think you're going to blend the two anyway, into Europe.
Absolutely. So we have a very full pipeline, and we really haven't skipped a beat in terms of all of this. In fact, the only two projects that have suffered any sort of a delay were in New York City, where the city has shut us down from a construction perspective. We were set to deliver at the end of June. And we've actually been shut down twice, which I'm not sure how many projects in the city get to say that. We've been shut down twice by the city. Wow. And then East Lansing, Michigan, where we were also shut down by the city. So those have really been the two projects that have been certainly the most impacted. We were set to deliver 4 hotels in Storrs, Connecticut, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, Cincinnati, Ohio. And I'm going to draw a blank on the 4th one, of course, because that's just how it always goes.
No worries.
But yeah,
We're drawing a blank on what day it is, so we get that.
Yeah. We were set to, Knoxville, Tennessee. We were set to deliver those 4 hotels here in May, right before graduation. Obviously, we have put a hold on those when we'll reopen when the time is right, most likely with campus reopenings in August, September. And then we've got a handful of other, great projects that will deliver. Tucson, Arizona is a ground up. We'll deliver in Q3. And then, as you mentioned, we've got our first foray into international markets. And last year we acquired, it's always been a dream and a hope that we could kind of test, not just test, but take our brands overseas. And I've had our eyes set on what I would argue are the 2 most iconic university markets in the world, in Oxford and Cambridge. We are very lucky to acquire what I would argue is the 2 best hotels and the 2 best pieces of real estate, 4 hotels in both of those markets. And it used to be a DoubleTree right on the River Cam in Cambridge. And then the Randolph, which is about a 300-year-old hotel in Oxford. And so we'll deliver both of those hotels in about May of next year. They continue on. And the projects continue on. And I always share this story the first time I addressed the team in Cambridge, we talk about telling these stories of the universities, and we had just opened in New Haven. I think this was September of last year, August of last year. And I had obviously, every one of these openings, you become so ingrained in the stories that you're telling through the design. And I went over to England and to Cambridge, and so I'm addressing this team and I'm bragging about the 300-year-old history of New Haven and all of the stories, the secret societies and everything we've drawn from. And everyone just kind of stared at me blankly, and someone raised their hand and they said, Cambridge is 900 years old. Like, we're not really impressed with a 300-year-old institution. And so it just speaks to, also it speaks to the strength of the institutions we've tied ourselves to in a time like this is what gives us a tremendous amount of confidence as well. So, a university like Cambridge has survived plagues and multiple world wars, and, it's truly the backbone to that country. And we're just so excited to be able to come and kind of tell our unique local story over there. And, just to tie it a little bit to localization, I think Europe has been doing localization so much better than the United States for so long. A lot of people have asked, how do you do a graduate story over there? How do you, the universities are very different over in Europe and how they do. There isn't nearly the same level of nostalgia. No, you don't have 100,000 people going back for a Saturday football game. But I would still argue that I think even when you look at some of the hotels, University Arms is a tremendous hotel in Cambridge, but that hotel could be anywhere in the world. It's a beautiful hotel in Los Angeles. It's a beautiful hotel in Cambridge. It really doesn't tell that unique story of Cambridge itself. It's kind of like what we talked about. You just throwing some black and white photos of Cambridge on the wall doesn't make you local, right? That doesn't tell the story of the town. And so
exactly.
I think we're going to come with our true commitment to telling the local stories over there. And I still believe that those communities, maybe even because they've been exposed to some of this a little bit more, are going to eat that up when we open next year.
So you're a year away from opening Cambridge and Oxford. Do you see, before you even open those, I'm going to ask you, are you expanding even further into Europe?
We are always looking. We don't have any set plans. We've identified a handful of cities in the UK that make a lot of sense. We've also identified a handful of cities through Europe that you could probably guess and make sense. And I've been really fascinated with the travel abroad program and any sort of crossover with our domestic hotels, where you've got kids that, you know,
Ah.
go to Barcelona, they go to Paris, and I've been fascinated with that idea, which
Mm-hmm.
you know, is only on paper, is not being executed anyway. So I think we'd love to continue expanding. I think, you know, we really want to make sure that we knock it out of the park in Cambridge and Oxford and improve the model. You know, we talked about the local markets domestically and how difficult it is. You know, we also have to show that we can execute, not just, you know, 3,000 miles away in Eugene, Oregon, but now we've got to do it over the Atlantic and execute our kind of brand of hospitality. So we're really focused on doing those 2 hotel projects, you know, maybe even the best graduates we've ever done, because it's going to be truly, you know, billboards to the rest of the world about what we are doing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's exciting.
Signature, right?
Yep.
There's actually an interesting question that came in
Yeah.
from Richard. You asked, what occupancy impact does Graduate Hotel anticipate as the result of higher education's transition to virtual learning and commerce? So how might this impact your business model for the future?
Yeah, so we, I think first and foremost, I'm just going to say, you know, very honestly and openly, we're not sure. We're in constant communication with the universities, and you know, the vast majority are saying they will be back in session come the fall in some sort of different form. I've seen several universities say they're going to be a combination of virtual and in person. So, you know, I'm going to be on campus, but I'm going to be, one day I'm in class, one day I'm at home, type of thing. And so we're working with our university partners in terms of what that looks like. You know, I think we're very lucky with the portfolio. We don't have nearly the same level of dependence on group or corporate transient. We're much more, you know, leisure-based, university travel-based, which we think will be bouncing back sooner, as soon as, you know, some of the medical trends start to shake out here. And also these markets are unbelievable drive-to markets as well, which I think everybody's expecting the drive-to leisure to bounce back first. So as soon as we start to see reopenings of restaurants, lifting of some of these rules, you know, our expectation is that a lot of these towns are going to be great kind of getaways for a few days after these several months of being stuck at home. So, you know, we are certainly expecting an impact that, you know, we're not going to get back to prior levels until next year. I think we're well positioned to be on the kind of leading edge or bleeding edge of kind of the comeback, but it certainly is going to be impactful in the short term.
Great.
Sure. You have, we keep talking about, you really found that niche with the universities and stuff, but you also have, this is an interesting program. I don't know if everybody's aware of this, but CLASS, where you have a private partnership with the universities to put your hotels on campus. How does that work? And how does that work with the portfolio? What is the benefit to the actual campus itself, having the hotel reside as part of that?
Yeah. So as you can imagine, you know, what we're bringing to a lot of these towns is an unbelievable amenity to the universities themselves. For so long, you know, they've been investing significantly in their campuses and the campus life. And then when you come and visit a town, I continue to go back to Charlottesville, so I'm going to keep on Charlottesville. If you come back to Charlottesville to visit UVA, which is just a beautiful, beautiful city, beautiful campus, and then you're staying in kind of, as we mentioned, a commoditized hotel product, doesn't speak to that experience in any way. So very early on in our growth, we realized just how much of an amenity and how important we started to become to these universities. And the CLASS program really started out of, we have this unbelievable project. It's the one in New York City that was set to deliver in June. It's been 4.5 years in the making with Cornell University on their Cornell Tech campus, which is on Roosevelt Island. That is, it's in partnership not just with Cornell, but also the city of New York, who owns Roosevelt Island. And then we've acquired since then, a hotel on the campus in University of Minnesota in Minneapolis. And so we've got 6 of these programs out there, and really what it does and what the program does, not just for us, but for the universities, is number one, it provides a pipeline of markets that, you know, didn't make sense for us to do a private investment, whether that be because it didn't have a lot of the additional demand drivers like state capitals or hospitals or anything else that kind of drives business to some of these towns, that we said, you know, it's just not going to work for us to acquire a building, reposition it, renovate it. You know, the basis doesn't make sense. But the university has a lot of pent up demand in travel, and they really needed a need for this. And so a lot of these universities have experienced or know the importance of the product, but also they're not in the hospitality business, right? You know, it's an extremely difficult business to be in. We're experts in it. I like to think we're experts in it. And so we kind of offer the universities the best of both worlds. We de-risk them in terms of providing a hotel product that doesn't sit on their balance sheet, but still provide a truly differentiated product that speaks to the university and the town themselves. So it's been a win-win. I like to say, I think there was 50 private, individual graduate markets that made a lot of sense. When you add the class program, that probably takes us to 100 graduate markets.
Wow.
So if you kind of think of where we can go long-term, it's a huge kind of growth potential. And we actually have several people dedicated just to sourcing those public-private partnerships.
Well, 100 was the earmark, wasn't it? I heard 100.
Oh yeah.
I will tell you, working with universities, hopefully I won't offend anyone who's watching, is one of the most difficult transactions, just because there are so many layers to how these universities work. And, and truthfully, when we talk about other developers trying to either copycat or do anything, I mean, the expertise that we've kind of built up through doing multiple deals like this and the time, I mean, it truly has taken 4.5 years to deliver the project in New York City, not just because of New York City timelines, but also just dealing with the layers of Cornell and the sign-offs and approvals and how you kind of do it. And it's just a big hand-holding exercise that we've gotten pretty.
Yeah. So one of the things that we hear about, we've seen a lot of communities come together and really support it. And there's a lot about, giving back and doing really great things. And you guys have created and developed this I Promise Village. And I want to know, and I'd love for you to share more about that, because it's a new partnership with the LeBron James Family Foundation as well. Where did that come from? How are you expanding it? Tell us more about that partnership.
Absolutely. So I think hopefully over the last 15 minutes, we've really hit that community and education are core pillars to everything that we do at Graduate. And we are constantly looking for like-minded partners in that kind of mission that we're driving for as a brand. And the opportunity to partner with the LeBron James Family Foundation, and if anybody is not, I feel like almost everyone is familiar with what he's done from an education perspective in the I Promise School in Akron, Ohio, and really providing a world-class education to underprivileged youth. Is kind of a perfect partner in this. And as part of his mission and his foundation's missions, they discovered how core and key the family life is to an education. And, he has an amazing story about, the number of days he lived out of a car when he was, I think, a teenager, and how much, he didn't attend school at the time when he was doing that. And there's just so many stories out there. And so we had this unique opportunity to partner with his foundation. We acquired a 22 unit apartment complex just a few miles from his school that we're renovating. And as you can only imagine, the Graduate way, it's all local and tied to his story, the story of Akron. And we'll actually be donating that 22 unit housing project in July to the foundation. So that'll be part of the foundation for the future of their growth of the school. And that will start housing, families for this next semester come the end of summer. And it just is really, it's a great opportunity. As we've grown so quickly, we finally, we've built the scale to be able to give back in really meaningful ways. It's always been a core of what we've done. Graduate Gives is our kind of charitable arm. We've always done a lot, and education's been core to that. Even last year, we helped give 3 $50,000 scholarships in partnership with Scholly, which is an app that helps play scholarships as well. So it's just kind of the next iteration of what we're doing in terms of being able to give back to the communities, really support this mission of education. And it's, probably just step one in doing a lot more of that.
Beautiful.
Do you see yourself identifying different charities within each individual community, or creating overarching programs that work for the brand in general?
So there are layers to it, which is the answer. It depends. There's always local. It's an important component for each hotel and the local marketing efforts to identify those local charitable partners. A lot of outreach with the universities themselves, which is doing a lot. You know, as much as we can kind of partner and piggyback and find really strong partners. And then from a national level, a brand level, we're constantly kind of finding those partners that either we can do regionally or nationally, and kind of you know, support on a bigger scale from a brand level.
Got it. Well,
That's
I
another
wanted,
layer of localization, Ariela.
Yeah.
yes, exactly. There we go. See, no, it's not just the photos you put on the wall and say, "Ooh, check, I'm a local." I love that. I want to get into. We might go over time, everyone. I know a lot of you have to hop off in 4 minutes, but we have a couple of questions I want to get into. Philippe, you answered about with food and beverage. There's a lot of talk in hospitality, of course, like the 6 feet apart rule, things like that. So how do you see that changing? And I know, Philippe, you're in the coffee world, so he's particularly asking about coffee. This may relate to last week's episode too.
Yeah, I think I think as it relates to food and beverage, we and all of our contemporaries are probably reacting as we are going through this. In many cases, this might end up being, I think I saw Barry Sternlick last week or 2 weeks ago call this like a zip code by zip code recovery.
Yeah.
And we have exposure to such drastically different environments in response to this. So, you know, I can just tell you the Northeast and the Northwest is very different than the Southeast and our markets down there. And so, you know, we're going to take kind of we're going to start with a one size fits all approach, but a lot's going to end up getting tailored to the local markets and the response there. We certainly are expecting a world when we reopen at the end of summer to be, you know, socially distanced, a lot more grab and go out of our outlets. A lot of focus on the internal customer when so much has been always on the external and bringing the locals into our lobby. You know, our lobbies are always designed and developed to be communal living rooms for the kitchen and or for the community. And so, you know, we're going to rethink about that. And, you know, does that mean we're spacing chairs a little bit? Are we pulling some furniture from our lobby to make it a little bit more distant? So, honestly, if this is just like the full transparency, we're throwing everything on a whiteboard and we're just kind of preparing to pivot as the world kind of evolves over the next 60 to 90 days. And, but we are certainly expecting a world where we're, you know, doing a lot more carry out, a lot more, you know, we had just started the beta test delivery in some of these markets, which is just not as prevalent as the urban markets like we're used to, but being able to start doing delivery out of several of our hotels and our outlets as we come out of this, we think is going to be really important. Even mobile ordering is something, you know, we've been a brand of a lot of high touch points. It's been a lot about, you know, when you have so many stories, we actually educate our staff on storytelling. It's about telling the stories of the hotel and the design and the product and being the you know, ultimate insider to the towns and the communities that we're in. You know, we have to rethink some of those interactions a little bit and just make sure that we're doing it in the right and thoughtful way. And we're not going to get rid of all of them because we lose who we are at that point. But, you know, how are you doing it in a way that's thoughtful to the safety of our guests and still true to who we are?
Yeah, that's a balance that I think a lot of us are going to start thinking of. I know for us, like with events, we're all about in real life events, conferences. It's like I give hugs to everyone that enters, but you know, we got to figure out if I turn my screen a little bit, you would see whiteboards galore. So I understand. Yeah, it's all the secrets. No joking.
I have a question for you, David, because I've had this dialogue and I'm convinced that there's and we always want to end on a positive. I know we're doing things in the interim because you really do embrace a social space. And as an industry, we've been looking towards that for the last decade, if not longer, creating these social hubs in the lobbies. I personally don't see it going away. We're human beings. We need to connect. I think there's like the interim solution and then there's the long-term solution. And are you addressing it in that form and fashion? Because there's no way that we're not socializing again. I'm not going to live the rest of my life and not hug somebody.
Yep, agreed.
I agree wholeheartedly. And, you know, I think, as you said, we're human beings and the communal social, like that is who we are at our core. And we're not going to override the desire to congregate, to laugh, to be together. And so I think certainly that's our belief. And, you know, sometimes I think even I personally, and we can struggle with not being too flippant in a time like this, because it's just like, we expect that or at least maybe in our heart, we're hoping we get there even sooner. And so I think you're realistic about the world we're living in. I think you're doing it in a pragmatic and real way in terms of providing the guest what they really need. And, we certainly will be at the forefront in terms of cleanliness standards, in terms of how we're approaching that. But I think we're not going to erode who we are as a brand, which is celebrating the social communal aspects of our guests, of the towns and the communities that we're in. And, I think as soon as it's safe, you're going to have an outpouring of people leaving their homes and wanting to get back to that in some way. And we've talked about our role at the heart of these communities in that kind of outpouring and celebration as we come out of this.
Yeah, I feel like there's going to be a newfound respect for, socializing with your friends and family and meeting new people. Amy, I think we talked about this in our first episode. It's like, you don't realize you missed something until it's gone. Like, I didn't realize that was like, it was like a privilege now to be able just to go meet new people. That's actually one of my favorite things to do, is like go to like different hotel lobbies always. And I'm like, I'm going to meet 3 new people. I want to hear their story, who they are. So that's not going away. And I love that. David, we do have students who attend these webinars. And like we were talking with you yesterday, we want to let them know that there's, these different sides to hospitality. It's not always what you think when you're studying for the hospitality degree, but what would be the advice you would give to students who are studying hospitality right now?
Yeah, I think this will be a nice little bow, hopefully, to the episode, but, don't be afraid to take the non-traditional route. I think, anyone that looked at me at the Ronald McDonald House, had no idea that I'd probably be where I am today, and kind of the routes and the influences and experiences are going to make you ultimately who you are. And I'll share just a little tidbit. I think when I was at Cornell, there was this massive movement towards real estate and banking away from the operations side of the business, to the point that I think a year or two after I had graduated, someone had circulated a petition to basically say, stop forcing us from taking culinary classes and all these other classes when I just should be taking business and banking. And someone asked me to sign it, and I said, no, you guys are an idiot. Like, my job is I have to talk to chefs. I have to find ways to relate. I have to understand the business as a whole. Doesn't mean I'm an expert in every little piece, but I have to understand how hospitality and the business has to work together. And the reason I can do that is because, I haven't been a one-track kind of person in terms of my background. It's been about being as broad as possible. It's been about pulling from as many experiences as possible. And I think ultimately that's what shapes you, and then certainly taking advantage of the opportunities when they're in front of you, and don't be afraid to take the risks. Like I said, a lot of people, I think my dad included, my dad's probably not tuning in, but he probably will watch later, thought I was a little crazy for taking a shot on AJ Capital and Graduate. And, even my wife and me, when we moved to Chicago, we both said this could be a year or this could be the rest of our lives. We don't know what it was. And we took a shot. And obviously 6 years later, we're much closer to the rest of our lives than we were to 1 year. So
that's fantastic.
Oh, I love that. Amy, is there anything else you wanted to ask before we head off?
No, actually that was perfect, because we always like to end on an inspirational point of view. You've certainly led the path not traveled, and I hope that inspired the various students and designers and owners and everybody that's on the call. And thank you so much. We could talk to you for hours.
Yeah.
I am, by the way,
students,
students, I'm happy, however, to share my contact information. Please, reach out or do LinkedIn, which I'm easy to find. I respond frequently or regularly. So please reach out. We are constantly needing the next generation of hospitality hoteliers in our company. And I think we've got an amazing platform and a brand to start growing from the ground floor in some amazing cities. And, in a few years, you can be going to the UK and Cambridge and, helping open up new hotels over there. So please reach out, and I'm happy to help.
And also, I can attest to that, because David, I found you on LinkedIn, sent you a message, you got right back to me. So David really does respond. Perfect. Well, I just wanted to go through a few reminders. Guys, this episode is going to be on YouTube. Normally, we do these events, but we want all of this content free for the community so that you can watch it, share it to your friends, colleagues, whoever you want. Please make sure again to put our emails into your primary inbox, and please use the hashtag #BoutiqueStrong especially. We're going to be doing a lot with this hashtag. I know I've been saying it for a while. Things are finally finishing out, and there's really exciting new initiatives coming. And with that, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay boutique. And okay, bye everyone. So everyone have a great week.
Thanks everyone, yeah.
David, thank you so much for coming and sharing your expertise. It is so appreciated.
Of course, thank you so much for having me.
Bye guys.
Thanks everyone. Bye.